Hi folks, Eric's back here and we want to do another newsletter here. There's a few, we're going to actually do 2 or 3 in a row here to get a bunch of information out to you. So first I'm going to do one, then Dad's going to do one. But what I want to talk about today is an issue that I've talked about before. You guys know that most of what I do is fairly small signs. This is that cedar, that light colored cedar that I use. You know, it's just 6-foot pickets that I get at Lowe's or Home Depot and works real well. Well, with this stuff, it's the way the grain of the board is. I don't have any issues with the ink that I use, and you guys know I use the Marsh ink. When I spray this on the board, I never have any issues with bleeding into the grain of the board. And so that's one of the reasons I like this stuff, other than the fact that it really carves nice and it's super good. But we've got plenty of videos that show you all about this material. But one issue that I do have, and you know, this will give you an idea of some of the small stuff that I carve on a regular basis. I do, you know, tons of these little small signs. Even though I'm not carving on site up in Oatman anymore, I still get lots of these kinds of signs to do. So anytime I have a sign that's 1x6 or less, meaning less than 6 inches wide, I almost always use this cedar, this light cedar. It's my favorite material. But when I have something that's wider than that, then I got to go to a different kind of material, because they don't make that cedar, or at least I can't find it in other than 1x6. So what I do, like for instance on my Live to Ride signs, which I make a lot of, and you guys have seen these plenty of times too. What I'm using now, what I have used in the past, is something that's called whitewood. It's what they sell at Home Depot and Lowe's, and they call it whitewood. In my opinion, it's just a downgrade of pine. It may be some other different species, but it looks like pine to me with knots in it. But I've had, you know, and I've recommended that in the past, but I've kind of gotten away from that. It's very inexpensive, but the problem is it cups and it warps and it causes all kinds of issues. So what I've decided to do, and what I've been doing for months now, is use just the clear pine, which is what this Live to Ride sign is. And here's a piece of 1x12 clear pine. So you can see this has got really no knots in it. That's about the biggest knot that you're going to find in this stuff. And I really like this stuff. It's nice and solid, and it carves really, really nice. But the one issue that I do have with it is this ink tends to kind of bleed into the grain if you're not really, really super careful. And sometimes even if you are. And you, like my dad's been telling me for years, don't spray so heavy. So I can tell you that first, is try and just have a light touch on this spray when you're spraying something that bleeds like pine. And there may be some materials that you're using that you're having the same kind of issues with bleeding. So here's what I found, and you've heard me talk about this before, is use a sanding sealer. Well, in the past, I've used a Spray Deft sanding sealer, and it's been okay, but I still had some issues, even with multiple coats. But what I've done, like actually on this piece of 1x12 here, is I've gone and I've heard a few of you guys say this too, is that this same Deft lacquer sanding sealer, now I brush it on. So this piece right here has 2 coats on it of brush on sanding sealer. Now I'm not thinning it at all. You can thin it if you want to. I'm not. I'm just using it full strength and giving it about an hour between coats. And you can see it has kind of a shine to it, probably, if the light hits it right. But it seals it up nice. And I find that 2 coats works really well. And I don't have any issues beyond that. In fact, I can spray this ink on heavy after I put 2 coats of that stuff on. And I don't have any issues at all. But here's the deal, and I found out this the hard way, and I was talking to Birch Robbins yesterday about this. What you need to do, and again, I found this out the hard way, as soon as you get your boards, put your sanding sealer on. Do not let it sit around, and don't lay your sign out first, because what I was doing is I was laying my sign out. Well, this is what I used to lay my signs out with my letters, and that defeats the purpose, because then the sanding sealer is going on after that. You got to put the sanding sealer on first. then start your sign. Then cut your shape, start your sign, lay it out with the ink, and then you can spray it again, sand it off, and what will happen is everything down in the groove, like on this sign here, everything down in the groove won't have sanding sealer on it, but you don't care. You just want the sanding sealer on the surface so it doesn't bleed into the grain. So what will happen is, and I've had this happen to me, and Birch was having that issue too, is he was carving his sign, then putting the sanding sealer on, and the ink won't stick down in the groove. It'll just come right off. Well, that's because it's got sanding sealer in there. So if you put your sanding sealer on when you first get your boards back, put your sanding sealer on and then set them aside. Maybe make a note on the edge, which I do, 2 coats of brushed sanding sealer, just so I know for a fact that it's on there. Then start your whole process. Start your layout. You can put the ink on. You won't have any issues at all. Then when you go to sand it off, you won't have any bleeding or anything. So that's the big thing. Make sure you put your sanding sealer on first before you even start laying out your sign. If you're laying your sign out with a pencil or whatever, then you can maybe throw sanding sealer on afterwards. But don't do any carving on it and then throw sanding sealer on it, because your ink won't stick to your carved grooves. It'll just come right off. So that's pretty much the biggest issues. So this stuff, I still love this ink, but when you're carving pine or something that has a tendency to have this ink bleed into the grain, make sure and use that sanding sealer. And I really like putting 2 coats, brush coats on both sides. That way I don't have to remember what's the front, what's the back, and all that. So I just put 2 coats on both sides, about an hour in between coats, and you'll be good to go. You shouldn't have any issues at all. What am I forgetting, Dad?
That sign has a finish on it.
Yeah, this has got a couple coats of my regular finish, the Krylon Clear that I get at Walmart. This has got 2 or 3 coats on that. So, but that's after everything's done. After the carving's done, the spraying's done, sanded off. Then I put my Krylon Clear on.
You don't put any sanding sealer on after that.
No. No sanding sealer on after the carving's done. No sanding sealer at all. Just the Deft, or the Krylon Clear after the carving's all done. That's it. The sanding sealer is all gone because I've sanded it off, but it doesn't need to be there. So then I just put my Deft.
So that
on.
nice finish we're looking at right now on there, that's the Deft.
No, this is the Krylon Clear.
I mean the Krylon Clear.
The Krylon Clear is like $4 a can.
Right.
I like the gloss, but some people like the satin or the semi-gloss. But I kind of like the gloss. It's got a little bit of a sheen to it. So yeah, that's no different than what we've showed before as far as what our finishing operation is. So what am I forgetting? Is that it?
I think that's about it, son.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and film another one. By the way, just so you don't forget, we're still in the running on Shark Tank. So if you haven't voted for us on the last video, you can go on there and get all the details on how to go on SharkTankZone.com and vote for us. So don't forget. So we'll talk to you next time. Bye.